Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today it's time to do the mid-year book freak out tag. I don't feel like I'm not really freaking out about it being the middle of the year and like what I've read. I feel very happy with what I've read. I feel like I've had a very good reading year, so I don't think I'm doing much freaking out. And I figure this would be the video where I talk about some of my favourite books that I've read in the first half of the year and just some of my thoughts and feelings on how my reading has been going this year. So as I said, I feel as though my reading has been going very, very well. I feel as though I've read a lot of books that I have really enjoyed this year, that my enjoyment level has been very, very high. I think in 2022, I had a lot of mediocre books that when I went to film my best books of the year, I struggled because I didn't have that many 5 stars, and actually I didn't have that many that I really thoroughly enjoyed. Whereas this year I have a lot of books that I have loved and really, really enjoyed. So my reading is going so much better, which then makes it harder when you have questions like best book of the year so far and best sequel. So I thought I'd just talk through a few and some of the ones that come to the front of my mind when I hear best book of the year. So I have some chunky ones in here. So this one I did start in 2022 and I finished in 2023. Feel like I have to mention it. Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson, continuing my journey through the Stormlight Archive. So I read the bulk of this in December, finished it in January. I think it speaks for itself, really, but really thoroughly my journey through the Cosmere. I do have a video reading this book as well, so a whole vlog dedicated to it and exploring my thoughts and feelings as I read it and my theories. Very enjoyable, fun series to read. And I won't dive into the plot of it, it is just epicness of epicness. Around the same time that I read that book, I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Very, very different book, but I loved this. Perfect book. Wasn't a very good time, but perfect book for that time. Really thoroughly enjoyed this one, and I do have a review up of this book, so I can make that. But we're following a main character, Emily, as she goes to a remote Nordic island to explore the fairies there, and it's her journey there with Wendell Bamblebee, her sort of romantic rival within the fairy academia sphere. Really enjoyed this. Would recommend. Back to the chunkiness, I really thoroughly enjoyed A Day Before the Night by Samantha Shannon, the prequel to The Priory of the Orange Tree. I loved the world building in this. So much world building, loads and loads of world building. Like, this is where these books excel. Like, really interesting characters, great world, great lore, great history to this lore. Really compelling chapters where they end and you just want to keep finding out what's going to happen, and because it's multi-perspective you keep turning pages to get back to the perspective, and then you do the same thing with all of the perspectives. So really thoroughly enjoyed this one. And then the latest one is The Serpent and the Wings of Night, and my small obsession that I now have with Carissa Broadbent, and how much I want to just read everything that she has written and just keep reading it all. So I did do 3 of her books in June, and I feel like that we're not going to stop there. We're not going to stop there because I've had a lot of fun reading these. They're fantasy romance series with a great amount of fantasy, like the fantasy romance balance doing very, very well here. The tension, the angst, the politics within the world, very bingeable, very, very enjoyable. So again, another favourite. So I feel as though that covers off some of my like best books and best sequels, which are the first 2 questions, and hopefully that's touched on some of my favourite books. I think there are definitely other ones that I've been thoroughly enjoying. That is not a unique list. I think I've got a lot of like 4.5 star books this year, which I think are books as well that I change my ratings depending on how much books stay with me. So I think there are ones that might end up going up, or maybe some that go down in the next 6 months or so as I think about them more and more. So the next question is to do with what's the new release that you have not read yet and are still wanting to read. So I've been trying to be really good with not buying too many books this year, whether they're new releases or old releases. I've been trying to work my way through my TBR semi-successfully, but I have a couple of new releases that are conclusions to series which I still need to read. So I have both Chain of Thorns and The Bone Shard War, which are both conclusions to series. I've talked about these a little bit now, and my intention to read them both since sometime in the spring. I've been planning to read these. Hasn't yet happened yet, but will definitely be happening. Chain of Thorns, written by Cassandra Clare, one of the books in the Shadowhunter world, so finishing off this series. And then The Bone Shard War is a fantasy series set on an archipelago that I have thoroughly enjoyed the first 2 books in, so looking forward to finishing both of these. I just haven't yet. I think this one I'm a bit worried because my memories of the first 2 are not so fresh, so I need to find a synopsis to remind me of those first 2 books, and then I can dive into this one. And this one, I've just been waiting to be back in the mood for this sort of YA angsty story. And then the next question is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I feel as though quite a few of the releases that I was really interested in came out already. Looking at the second half of the year, I do have a anticipated releases video for the next 3 months, so for July, August and September, and there are a good few things coming out. I am interested in the Threads of Power series by V. Schwab that's coming out in September. There are a few more like sequels coming out that I'm interested in. So Stephanie Garber's sequel to the Once Upon a Broken Heart, that's still to come out. There's Brandon Sanderson's books to come out, so the 4th book in the Skyward series. I haven't read any of his secret projects yet either, which I guess would fall into anticipated release that I haven't read, as well as anticipated release still to come out, because there's a mixture there, so he's got loads. So I feel as though there's still quite a few things to come out. I haven't, as I have been trying to restrain my buying, I haven't been looking too much at the new releases, aside from the ones that are sequels. So I think most of what I am anticipating is down the sequel route. Disappointments. So my most disappointing books of 2023 so far. And as I was saying, most of my reading has been going very well this year, and I have been DNFing a few books as well, which I think I've got better at, where I've gone, this book's going to be 3 stars, let's just stop it. But I do have some disappointments. Glow by Raven Kennedy, I was disappointed in. This was just unnecessarily long. I really liked Gleam, the 3rd book. That was a very, very strong book in this series, but this one just went on and on and on and on. But I will finish it off. There's just one more book left. I feel as though we have got to probably an interesting point within the series, but I was a bit disappointed in this. I had hoped for more from it. And then this one, I don't think is a bad book at all. I just had very high expectations for it, and that is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. So if you don't know, hi, I'm Abby. I love the David trilogy. I absolutely love the David trilogy. It is one of my favourite series of all time. And I think because of how much I love that series, I adore that series, my expectations for this were very, very high. And this is a very different book to the David trilogy. Obviously, it still pulls from the same mythology, the same lore. It's got the same writing style in a way, but it's told in a very different way. The David trilogy, I think, is much darker in tone, much more political, whereas this is like an episodic adventure. So it feels as though we have gone through this episode of this adventure, doing this quest, whereas the David trilogy felt like it was an overarching narrative that got darker and darker. I do wonder, hopefully, if this series will become less episodic as it goes on. And I think this was still really good. Like, I still enjoyed it. It just didn't give me the 5-star feelings that I got from David Bad. It wasn't as attached to it as I was to David Bad. However much I wanted to be, like I really, really wanted to be, because I mean, it's beautiful, it's S.A. Chakraborty, and it was good, but it wasn't as amazing as I really wanted it to be. And then the next one is biggest surprise of 2023 so far. And this one I had a very quick, easy answer to, and that was The Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan, the 2nd book in the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. So I read The Justice of Kings, which is the 1st book in this series, last year, and I liked it. It was fine. It was good, but I didn't love it. Whereas this book, I really, really enjoyed this one. Like, this book surprised me because I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. I thought I would enjoy it potentially to the same extent, potentially a little bit more than the second one, but this book just was so much better than the first one. So much better. So the 1st book, we are following a main character, Conrad von Volt, but through the eyes and perspective of his assistant, Helena. And they are investigating a case of a woman getting murdered within this world, as Conrad von Volt is a justice and goes from town to town meting out justice. And then we follow that, but we know that there's probably like a wider plot that's going to be happening. And thankfully, this book delivered. We got the wider plot that I was really, really hoping that we would. That 1st book was very insular. It was focused around this town. Helena felt quite young, whereas I really grew to enjoy her personality within this one. And where this one went, it got so much darker. It got sort of some more horror elements within it. I I really enjoyed the progression of this series, where we got to the expansion of the world in terms of the magic, the politics, everything about it. It was so much stronger. I really enjoyed this one, and it's made me really excited to continue on with this series when the third book comes out. And then the next question is favourite new to you author. So for this question, I had to think about an author that I had started reading from this year, and I wanted to have read more than one book. I may have read Emily Wilde, for example, by Heather Fawcett, and I loved it, but I've only read that one book by her, so I can't call Heather Fawcett a new favourite author, because as of right now, I've only read that one book, however much I enjoyed it. So I had to think about a new author that I'd read multiple books from. That was my specification for this question, or the rules that I put in place for myself, and that would have to be Carissa Broadbent, because I have now read 3 of her books. Very quickly I read 3 of her books, but I thoroughly enjoyed them. So these are all in the same series, The Crowns of Neaxia, and I really liked this series. I am now obsessed. I want to read more. I need to read more. I need to go out and get the next standalone within this series, and then I need to read her other series. I just foresee that happening. Very much enjoying Carissa Broadbent and the way that she combines elements of fantasy and romance and tension, and that it seems to be very well done. I like the characters, I like the writing style, I find it very engaging. So Carissa Broadbent is my new favourite author. Now the next 2 questions in this tag are to do with characters. The first one is your newest fictional crush, and then the next one is your newest favourite character. So I've adapted them a little bit to be favourite male character and favourite female character. I do definitely read some fantasy romances, but I feel it's just better I'm not really crushing on any characters. So I'm going to talk about my favourite male characters and then my favourite female characters. So for male characters, I have been reading the First Law series, and I really enjoy all the characters within here. They're very fun to read about. So I'm not saying any particular one of these male characters, but I've been really enjoying reading about Glocta, who is the torturer within this world, who's the crippled torturer because he's being tortured and now he is a torturer. Very interesting to read from his perspective. Would not like to really come across him in the real world, but very much enjoying reading his perspective and the politics that are in his perspective. Logan Ninefingers, very much enjoying him. He just seems like he's been brought up in a very brutal world, a very dangerous person, but has a very good heart, such a good heart. And then some of the other characters in here, it's not as though I really like them as characters, but I think they're very well done. I think they're very well written. So I get so emotionally, not attached to them, but emotionally invested in them because of how well written they are. Even if they're really annoying me, I think these characters really stand out. I think they're very well fleshed out. They feel well, I don't know if they really could be real people, but they feel very real. So my favourite new male characters are the ones from this series. In terms of my favourite female characters, these characters feel like they would be friends if you paired them together. So I've been really enjoying Emily Wilde and also Helena from this series. I feel like these people would get on. I feel like they'd be friends. They come from very different series, but I feel like the personalities of these characters would get on very well together. So Emily Wilde, she's an academic. She enjoys exploring, finding fairies, really interested in her passion, but enjoys also being cozy in her cottage. Helena, I just grew to really like her in this book. That in the first one she felt very naive, very young. I like the way that her perspective is told from she is a young girl, she's a young woman, but she's looking back on her life from her future self. So as an old woman looking back on her younger self, critiquing what she was doing, I just really enjoyed the way that perspective is done. Yeah, I feel like I've enjoyed reading these 2 female. Could lean quite academia-y. These 2. The next question is on a book that made you cry. I haven't really done much crying this year. I haven't really been gravitating towards books that sound like they're going to make me cry, or really reading things that are really emotionally affecting me. But I would say the closest book was Alone with You in the Ether, and this follows a very dysfunctional relationship. It's more of a love story where as opposed to a romance, following people that suffer from some mental health disorders or mood disorders and them coming together. And I just found that it was, the way that this was written, it made me think quite a bit. It wasn't like a happy book or a sad book. It got me to thinking. It didn't really make me, I don't think it really made me cry, but I guess it was one that really got to my emotions. And then a book that made me happy, we're back to Emily Wilde. Again, I found this book very thoroughly enjoyable. I was reading it in January, and January was not a good month for me. January was quite a traumatic month for me. It was just one trauma after another, and I was reading this book, and this book was a very, very good escape, and it made me quite happy to be reading this book. At that time, it was a very good distraction. I really fell into this story and into these pages, and I think it did a very good job of lightening my mood. A really, really happy book for me. And then most beautiful book. I don't know if I have to have read this or if I just have to have bought it, but I've read all of these anyway. But beautiful books, I guess for me, I've determined it because it has sprayed edge. So sprayed edged books. So I bought this edition of Happy Place because of the edge, and I just love the ombre. Like, I love this ombre. Like, I don't know if the cover's doing anything special, but the ombre is special. The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. It was a little bit disappointing in terms of its contents, but its cover is beautiful. Like, I love the gold foiling on it. The map's very pretty. It's signed, it's got red edges. Like, I think this one's just a very pretty book. So this one, and then again, edges. This one I think has a very pretty cover. Like, this image, this imagery that goes around this whole book, so like all of that I think is very, very pretty. That is like very pretty. All sides of this book are very pretty. And then what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Oh, there are just so many of them. So many of them. Books upon books upon books. I have quite a few sequels and series I want to finish. So I spoke about The Bone Shard War and Chain of Thorns earlier. I do have other sequels that I want to read, so like The Last Argument of Kings, Poison Song. I have quite a few rereads I want to do. So I've just started my reread of The Forgetting Moon and finishing off that series. I've got like the Rook and the Rose trilogy, which I want to reread and finish. Skyward, I want to reread and finish that series. So I've got lots of series that I want to either finish or like restart and finish. So lots of work going on there, and we'll leave it at that for now. I do have a series that I want to start in the next 6 months, so series for 2023, which I don't know if it'll be up right now or coming, but I can link that as well. So some potential new series that I want to work on, but there's some ideas. Lots of books, all the books, every book. My expectations of how much I can read are always grossly overestimated, way overestimated. And then what is your favourite video that you have done in 2023? And I've realised when I saw this question, when I look back on the videos that I've created this year, that a lot of them are very generic. I have struggled a bit with my timing this year, so I have reduced down to 1 video a week, which then just means that I end up with some of the more generic booktube content, so TBRs, wrap-ups, anticipated releases, and so there hasn't been that many like creative videos that I've done this year. It really made it quite obvious to me when I look back how sort of generic my content has been, which I don't know if there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but it's not been the most inventive because I haven't had so much time to do the more inventive, probably more time-consuming videos. But I did really enjoy doing my Oathbringer reading blog, so that came out in January at the beginning of the year. I put that one out. Those ones I always really enjoy filming, like coming up with all the theories, that whole experience I really enjoy. So my Oathbringer vlog. And then the final question is on book community members that you've been watching this year. I feel like I haven't been as good at watching booktube content this year. My watch later is just off the charts. So from people that I've been watching for years and years and years, I have a massive backlog of videos in there that I've been very sporadic with watching things. I've been doing a lot of traveling with work, which has disrupted both my reading and my like watching YouTube time that I've had to prioritize. So my watch later is just off the charts. I don't even know what to do with it anymore because it's so big, whether I just scrap it and start again. And so I haven't really been like actively looking out for like loads of new book reviewers to watch. I have discovered a couple of new channels this year. So instead of talking about ones where I routinely watch them, I just thought I would talk about the couple of new booktubers that I have discovered this year and that are new to me. So I have recently started watching Rachel from Ravenhead Reader. She reads mostly like fantasy romance books. So I've been getting lots of fantasy romance recommendations from her. Really, really enjoying her vlogs and her content. Just all of the recommendations, all of the fantasy romance recommendations I've been enjoying because I've definitely been more in that headspace than the epic fantasy headspace this year and really, really embracing the fantasy romance mood. I do feel like my epic fantasy mood is coming back. So I've been really enjoying her content if you like long vlogs. would recommend. I also discovered Kirsten from the Reading Nymph, so she lives in London like me. We haven't met up yet, but we both live in the same city. Again, I've been enjoying her vlog content as well. That's something that I want to do better at, is doing vlogs, because I really enjoy watching them. I just don't really film them myself, but really enjoying her vlog content. She's very, very good at them, as well as incorporating like the food that she eats into the vlogs. So would recommend her as well if you're after vlog content and a wide variety of books, like a wide variety of different sort of genres that she reads from. There we go, that is the mid-year book freakout tag. Let me know what your prettiest book is that you have bought this year, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!